Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. I'm Callie, and today I'm going to be going through my July wrap-up. I read a lot more in July than I anticipated. I think I read a total of 17 books in the month of July. My average is like 14. So I'm pretty happy. 2 were rereads. 1 was an audiobook and the rest were just normal paperback editions. Not paperback, but printed editions. So, without further ado, I'm gonna jump right into it because I have a lot of books to go through. The first book that I have is Beasts Made of Night by Tochi Onyebuchi. I gave this 2.5 stars. I didn't super care for it. The premise was really interesting. This boy is this most prevalent sin eater within his community, but the more sin you consume, the darker your soul becomes. And usually these sin eaters are very poor and they're looking for something to this is how they sustain themselves and their families, but they eventually die or go insane and die. I loved the premise of this. It was very unique and very interesting. However, I don't think it was executed to its fullest potential. I found the magic in the world was not really explained all that well, so it was just kind of a lot of guesswork. For me, the actual plot line and story itself was a bit confusing to actually follow. I felt like we jumped around a lot and skipped to just specific points that needed to be discussed in order to move our plot along. And I didn't super care for that. The characters also fell a bit flat for me, and it did not click for me, unfortunately. However, the next book that I read, Tigress by Amelie, I gave 4.5 stars because I loved this book just so much. There was such an increase in violence and gore in this that fit the world so well. So as this is the second book, I'm not going to go into what happens in it, but we're following this is the second book to Blood Heir. The first book being that we're following a princess who has an affinity for blood magic. And she is blamed for the murder of her father and has been on the run, and she is mission oriented to actually catch the person who killed her father and regain her name, and cleanse her name and be at her brother's side as he rules their country. So we're following Anya through that entire journey. With all of the violence and everything, I think one of the things I love about Anya is in worlds where magic is not necessarily revered or it's more of a persecution than anything, the main character who has the magic is always afraid of it or is afraid of themselves. Anya, with her beautiful blood magic that she has, leans into it, and she leans into all of the violence and the gore, and I love that about her. She is so headstrong of a main character, and it's just so well done. I think the thing that I love about this is the characters. The characters are so dynamic. Their arcs are fantastic within this story. We also get a lot of information about the villains in this story, and they get a lot of development, which makes it even more dynamic and just even more fun of a read to follow along. I love this series. I'm so pumped for the last book. The next book that I ended up picking up is Dorothy Must Die by Danielle Paige. In this, we're following a girl who is dropped into Oz, and basically what she knew is the movie. And that's it. And because I think this is she's more of modern day kind of girl. But in this, Dorothy has taken over Oz and has become our villain. I ended up giving this 3 stars. I really liked the premise. It was a dark, twisted version of what I already know from The Wizard of Oz. I've never read any of the books. I've seen the films. I've seen the Wizard of Oz sequel that came out in like the 70s or 80s. Still gives me nightmares. And I've seen Wicked. So I've seen like all the things that go with The Wizard of Oz. Never read any of the source material. However, there was a ton of callbacks to the creepy ass sequel, to Wicked, and to the original film. And I really liked all the callbacks because I could actually understand them. I did find that it was extremely predictable. I knew exactly what was going to happen. I knew exactly where we were going. But that doesn't mean that I didn't enjoy it. I did give it 3 stars, and 3 stars isn't bad. It was a bit predictable. It was very fast paced, very easy to read, and just overall kind of a good time. I think if you're a big Wizard of Oz fan, you'd get a lot more enjoyment out of this than I did. The next book that I picked up was Frankly in Love by David Yoon. In this book, we are following a young boy from a Korean family whose family is pressuring him to date Korean girls. So he strikes a deal with one of his family's friend's daughter, so they can both date. They will fake date each other to please their family so that they can actually date who they want to. And our story kind of goes on from there, and it's kind of a hodgepodge of a mess, because of course it is. Fake dating always leads to a hodgepodge of a big mess. But I really enjoyed this. I ended up giving this book 4 stars, and I just enjoyed that it had that immatureness that I think a lot of contemporary books lack when it comes to teenagers. It had that teenager feel. It didn't feel like a young adult trying to write a teenager as a young adult. They were teenagers. And I enjoyed that. I also loved all of the themes of family, tradition, belonging, and just basically finding your sense of self. This was a journey of self-discovery, and I think it was really well done. The romance was extremely predictable for high school relationships, opposed to other contemporaries I've read. I think this has kind of gotten me... This is the first YA contemporary that I've read in probably about a year, because... I don't know, they just leave a bad taste because they're just either so ungodly realistic or annoying. And I think that I may jump back into YA contemporary because of this book. It was very well done. I really liked it. And it was just overall a fantastic read and a fantastic debut. I believe this is his debut. And it was very good. I enjoyed it. The next book that I have ended up DNFing, and that is Piranesi by Susanna Clarke. I have no idea what this book is about. Not a clue. I got to the first, I think, like 50 or so pages, and I was like, I can't do this. I have no idea what's happening. I have no idea what this is, and I DNF'd it. Because I can. And life's too short to read books that I don't understand. I'm sure Susanna Clarke has good writing. I just don't think her writing style is for me, because I did not get it at all, even a little. The next book that I picked up is Queen of Hearts by Colleen Oakes. This is a Red Queen, Queen of Wonderland origin story. I think I should have read this before I read Heartless, because Heartless is better. This is different. It takes a different twist on, the Queen of Hearts deal. And I liked this twist. It was dark. It was fun. It had that very whimsy Wonderland air about it. I ended up giving it 3 stars. Similar to like Dorothy Must Die. I'm not a big Alice in Wonderland fanatic. I've read the original story. I've seen both the movies. No, there's 3. There's the animated, then there's the Tim Burton, and then there's the Tim Burton sequel. I've seen all of them. So, I like the story, but I'm not a fanatic. I did like how all of our, original OG characters were incorporated into this prequel. It was great. It was fine. Very predictable. Very 2013, 14 YA writing style, which, again, nothing wrong with that. It was fine. But I can see exactly where this series is going, and it's fine. I will continue the series because I'm hoping I'll be surprised. I don't think I will be, but I have hope. It's a good book if you like Alice in Wonderland. If you're a big fanatic, similar to Dorothy Must Die, if you were a huge Alice in Wonderland fanatic, I think you'd enjoy this. I do think Heartless is better though, so there is that. I picked up The Darkest Star by Jennifer L. Armentrout because I finished the From Blood and Ash series, at least what's out, and I needed more Jennifer L. Armentrout, and From Blood and Ash was actually the first Jennifer L. Armentrout world that I had stepped into. And I've had these books on my shelf for a while, so I needed more, and I picked this up. So this is actually a sequel series to her original series, Lux. So that's my bad. Never read that series. Probably won't now that I know what happened to the characters. But this is following after Lux. I think it said 7 years after. And what happened in Lux is aliens came down. They look like humans, but they're different. And this is following a girl who is a goody two-shoes, but then starts to realize she starts meeting some aliens and realizing that the world is super screwed up and humans suck. And that she's actually not... This is a romance. This is 100% alien romance. Ish. I loved it. I gave it 4 stars. I thought it was highly enjoyable. With the fact that this is a sequel series, I was never confused about the history, the lore, how the mechanics of the world worked. Never once confused. She explained it very efficiently and easily that I didn't have to read the previous novel to understand. I really liked the characters of this. They were very realistic and very relatable. And thus, the love story in this was also very realistic and very relatable. And I enjoyed every second of it. However, with this, predictable. I think I read too much because a lot of things are becoming very predictable. But the way that these were predictable, I feel like you were supposed to predict them. Because Jennifer Armentrout's sneaky that way, where she thinks that you're being smart, but really she just wanted you to figure that piece out so that she can then reveal later things in subsequent books. From what I understand, that's a theme with her, at least it was with From Blood and Ash, and this came out before that series, so we're gonna go with its constant theme with her. Overall, really enjoyed this. I don't know, I haven't read a lot of like alien sci-fi books. This was good. I'm gonna dive into more of this genre. Up next, I picked up In an Absent Dream by Seanan McQuire. This is the 4th book in the Wayward Children series that I've been slowly reading. In this one, this was the first time we're actually following a logical world, and it's a prequel. So we're going back to our origin story-ness that we got in the beginning of this series, whereas book 3 kind of deterred from that, and we got a sequel. It's all over the place. But we got more of, I think she's one of the teachers. Yeah, she's one of the teachers at the academy. I don't remember how everyone connects, if I'm being honest. But you can read these as standalones, and they work just fine. These books are just so whimsical, and even though this was a high logic world, which I didn't anticipate to like as much as the more chaotic worlds, or I think they call them nonsense worlds, I still got a lot of enjoyment out of it. This is the saddest of all of them thus far. This was sad, but I loved every second of it. I think I said I gave it 4 stars. I don't know if I said it already, but I gave it 4 stars because it was just so good. Love this series. Each book is getting better and better, and I will continue. I think this is supposed to be like 10 books long, and I'll read all 10 books. I will. That will happen. Up next was my first reread of the year, and this one was actually a re-listen. I only have the mini version because I didn't feel like digging out my hardcover. I finished my reread of Tower of Dawn by Sarah J. Maas. Tower of Dawn is probably my least favorite of all the books because we're not following the main perspective anymore. We're following a different perspective. However, I do have a high appreciation for this book. The more I read this book, the more appreciation I get because of how much information and the characters we meet within this story. I feel like this story should have maybe happened after Era of Fire opposed to right before Kingdom of Ash, because I know that when I first read it, I just zoomed through it because I wanted to get to Kingdom of Ash, but I knew I needed to read this book. And then during my rereads, I've been slowly like noticing things where it's like, okay, this makes sense, but I still want to get to Kingdom of Ash. So, but this reread, I really had a big appreciation for what the characters go through, the healing journey that happens. This is book 7, 6, 7. I don't remember anymore. There's so many books in this series. So, I'm not going to go, obviously, into too much of a detail of it, but if you know, you know. Tower of Dawn's not my favorite, but the more I read it, the more appreciation I get for it. The next book I picked up is The Bright and the Pale by Jessica Rubinkowski. I really like this. I didn't expect to like this. I'm getting kind of tired of like the whole cold, wintry crap that's been going around a lot. It's summer. Maybe I should have read this in winter. That's beyond whatever. However, beginning was a bit slow. We're following a girl who, her entire village, I think it was her village, was frozen due to this big calamity event called the freeze, but she ended up escaping, and she meets this boy, and her and this boy become best friends. And then we fast forward like 5 or 6 years, and the boy ends up getting killed to save the girl. Now we're at a year later, and then we're at the point of the book where she's still kind of dealing with her grief over her friend, and she goes on this mission, she gets caught, and then she runs away from the mission, and she finds out that her friend's not dead. And then she has to go on this mission to like help her friend who is now in service to a guy that she has no idea, and she's just kind of there because her friend's there. It was a very poor explanation. If you followed it, kudos to you. I think the best part of this book was the internal conflict. There was a ton of internal conflict with this character because of what she's experienced in her past. She goes through so many emotions, and I think that that is written really, really well. And you just see her battling with herself constantly. It was very well done. Similarly, the atmosphere was very well done. It was cold, desolate, and you had this just sense of dread throughout the entire story. And I loved it when they get to this mountain, which is our main conflict point, or our main conflict point. The atmosphere is just chef's kiss. So good. So good. I felt cold. I made a hot drink in July while reading this book. It was that good. So, highly recommend. I think this is highly underrated. I didn't have a lot of predictions while reading this. I just enjoyed reading it. Up next is my other reread, which was Heart of Thorns by Bree Barton. In this book, we are following a girl who has been training her entire life to be a witch hunter. And her main goal is to find the witch that killed her mother, while simultaneously trying to protect her younger sister from these witches. And on her wedding day, she discovers that she is a witch by healing the prince, who is her betrothed, because of course. And they run away on this journey because now she's being hunted because she's a witch. So she has to kind of unravel all of her family's secrets and try and understand where she belongs in this world. What I loved about this book, especially the second time around, because I didn't remember a ton of what happened the first time I read it, because I think I read this right when it came out in like 2018. Just getting back into it was really well done. I loved the witch hunter vibe. It was really good. I love a good witch hunter story. Similar to The Bright and the Pale, the internal conflict, really well done. You see the main character struggling so much with her identity because her whole life has revolved around killing of these women, these witches, and she then finds this community of witches who help her, and she has this just huge identity crisis, and you see her worldview explode, and I loved that. I think it is so well done, and I'm very excited. I plan on finishing out the series because the series is finally complete as of this year, so I want to finish this out, and I'll probably be doing that in August. Up next was Sarah's pick for me for this month, which was Wild Magic by Tamora Pierce. I ended up giving this 3 stars. 3 stars. This was written in 1992, so that was before I was born, and you can tell. I found the main character to be really annoying. We're basically following this girl, this like 12 or 13-year-old girl who her entire life she's just kind of thought she's really good with animals, but turns out she has this like wild magic. Hence the name. And she's kind of thrust into this war, and she uses her magic and starts to learn about how her magic can be useful and attune it and grow her magic. And that was a really fun journey. I just found her to be very annoying. I also found that the pacing was kind of everywhere with this book. I've never read a Tamora Pierce book before. And I did enjoy it. While the pacing was all over, I do plan on continuing on with this series because Sarah's told me to keep at it. She knows the main character's annoying in the first book or 2, but you grow with her. Those 4-book series, I think, happens over the span of like 10 years or something like that. So you actually grow with this 13-year-old. And I'm excited to see that growth. I'm excited to see more creatures. We see a lot of really cool mythological creatures within this story, and I'm excited to get to more. The next book that I finished was Sarah and mine's buddy read for the month of July, which was Half Sick of Shadows by Laura Sebastian. Now, I love Laura Sebastian. I read her Ash Princess series, and I love it. So naturally, I picked up this book. Half Sick of Shadows follows Elaine of Shalott, which is based off of the poem The Lady of Shalott, which is from the King Arthur times. And Elaine is, I believe, the wife of Lancelot. So we're following Elaine, and this story, Elaine is a seer, and she can see different things change depending on choices that they make. So Elaine, throughout this entire book, knows how her friends' stories are going to end, and her own, but she can't tell anybody, which you see that conflict in her, and you see that with her friends as well. Some of them are more understanding, like Arthur's like, no, don't tell me, I get it. While some of the others are like, give me something to work off of, and she can't. I think that Elaine's voice in this, it was a lot about love and friendship and sisterly bonds, and it was so well done. Very feminist retelling of Arthur, which you never really see because it's King Arthur. So seeing it from Elaine's point of view was a different side, and her voice within this story is very poetic and very determined. The only thing that I found a little bit jarring was you sometimes switch between what's happening in real time and Elaine's visions, and you're never really given a difference. So sometimes that could be a bit jarring, but seeing those visions and seeing the different options, because a lot of what I think isn't talked about with seers and all of that is there's options. And all I can think about is Avengers, where Doctor Strange, he sees the one time he looked at 4 billion options or whatever, and there was one where they beat Thanos. And I feel like that was kind of turned and twisted in this, where she sees those options and she can kind of manipulate what's happening to try and get those better outcomes. And I really loved seeing that. Overall, I really enjoyed this. If you like King Arthur mythology, lore, anything of that nature, highly recommend this book. Highly, highly recommend it. I enjoyed every second. Up next, I picked up Realmbreaker by Victoria Aveyard. This book's been sitting on my shelf since it came out, and I've been meaning to get to it. This is a very Lord of the Rings-esque book. We have like 6 different points of views. We have this big giant quest, but basically it's if the chosen heroes failed their mission, where would that... So like if Frodo screwed up and Sauron got the ring, what would happen? And we're following that, and I really enjoy that. We have this kind of ragtag team trying to like remedy what has happened, and I loved it. I gave this 4 stars. I will say a lot of world building. There is a ton of world building in this. The first half was kind of hard to get through because you're trying to understand all these characters and their dynamics and the world and where they fall into the world, along with how they fall into this group dynamic, because they're, like I said, they're this kind of ragtag hodgepodge of a team. So you have to try and understand their role within the world, within the team, and a lot of them just don't want to save the world. They're just like, like, if it goes to shit, it goes to shit. Whatever. And I kind of liked that mentality because it's not something you see. You see those uber heroic, like, I must save the world. But in this, like, most of them, I would call them, except one, are like morally gray. Or like, world ends, whatever. Life goes on, kind of a mentality. And I really liked that. It was very different. And overall, I enjoyed it. I'm excited for the second one. Up next, I picked up Night of the Dragon by Julie Kagawa. This is the final book in the Shadow of the Fox trilogy, which you are following a kitsune girl, which is half fox, kind of demon, as she's trying to take this dragon scroll to get a wish and trying to get away from bad demons. And it is very anime, very Avatar: The Last Airbender, and I love it. You're in this very atmospheric Japan setting, and it was so cool to follow. I loved the finale. I gave it 4 stars. I think it tied everything so nicely. The ending crushed my soul in the best of ways. I loved it. I just love how everything coalesced and came together. There were no loose ends, loose strings. Everything came together fantastically. I love it. I think this is a fantastic trilogy. If you love anything anime, Naruto, Avatar: The Last Airbender, if you like anything of that nature, I would highly recommend this series. The next book that I picked up is Crazy Stupid Bromance by Lyssa K. Adams. I needed a little bit of a romance novel to break up all of the fantasy that I read. And this was a perfect palate cleanser. As much as I hated the last Lyssa K. Adams book, this one was really good. We're following Noah, who is our computer geek, and we're following the girl from the last book who owned the cafe. and you get to see the ramifications of the previous novel, as well as get a little bit more background into her story. I think this was a very cute romance. This is a friends to lovers trope, which is one that I love to see but don't see enough. I think that the pacing of the romance and the smut were really well done, opposed to some romances that drag it out. This wasn't dragged out at all. The way that their romantic feelings came together was really well done and executed. I also really like how in touch with their emotions they were. It's not something you see very often in a romance, and it's not, I mean, you see it, but you see it in more of those emotions of love and longing. But in this, their emotions were all over the place. There was really good instances of anger, sadness. You get all of that, and it's not just on the girl. Like, Noah goes through so many emotions within this story, and I love to see that. It was really cool, really well done, and the only thing is there were a ton of loose ends at the end of this book, and I want more with this couple. I know the next book is The Russian, and I do want to read that one. This is Brittany's copy. She's been collecting the series, so I've just been borrowing it from her. So when she's done with that one, I'll probably pick up the next one. And I'm just excited. I want more of this couple in particular. They were so cute and just so much fun. The next book that I picked up is House of Hollow by Krystal Sutherland. This is a thriller mystery novel-ish. If the cover's not a big giveaway of that. Where we're following these set of sisters when one of them goes missing, and something happened to them when they were younger that they don't remember. But that kind of history starts to come back and haunt them, and they have to try and understand what actually happened to them when they were younger. But yeah, basically they have to unravel what actually happened to them and try and understand it. And kind of goes from there. It is very dark, very creepy. It has that creepy factor. I was creeped out most of the entire time. I ended up giving it 3 stars. It was relatively okay. I did guess the twist of what happened to them fairly easily. I think there's a theme to this video, is I guess a lot of things. But I would really like to, I think this was her debut, so I'd like to read more. I see a lot of potential in her writing, and I'm excited to get to more of it because I think she does have a really cool writing style that is just going to be really interesting if she continues to write these like mystery thriller kind of things. And the last book that I picked up for this month, I picked up Planet Barbarians by Ruby Dixon. This is an adult book that was gifted to me. I've seen it a lot on Book Talk, and when it was gifted to me, I wanted to see what all the hype was about. This is an adult sci-fi romance where a girl is kidnapped by aliens, and the aliens have ship trouble and leave them on this ice planet. And she ends up finding one of the girls who's kidnapped. She's like kidnapped with a bunch of girls. They find this alien race of blue people who are living like barbarians. And it kind of goes from there. I give this 4 stars. I highly enjoyed it for what it was. This is alien smut. That's what this is. It's alien smut, and it's a good palate cleanser, and I bought the second book, because I did, and I have no regrets. So I know this has been a long video, but these are all the books that I read in July, so that's gonna be it for today's video. Please like, comment, and subscribe to our channel. We post videos every Tuesday and Thursday with the occasional Sunday. Let me know down below in the comments what your favorite book you read in July was, or what you're most looking forward to reading this month. So that's gonna be it for today's video, and I will see you guys in our next one. Bye!